ramble briefly about strings just to show you a few of the things that you can do. I guess there's always kind of two parts to this learning thing. There's like conceptually what is something, and then there's like the fine details of what can you actually do. Usually the fine details bit you just Google for. It's like something like, how do I check if a string contains another string? You just Google and then there'll be like 12 answers saying just run this code. Does that make sense? Because there's just so many of those things to remember. Okay, so we make a string. Let's do hello, my name is Steve. So just create some kind of longish string. Oh, oops. Can you echo? Yeah. Okay. So just create a long string. Can be anything. Okay, so like before, we can ask it, what are you? Just in case we didn't know, it tells it we're a string. And again with the methods, there's a big long list. And I'm mostly just gonna like pick out a few of the interesting ones just to show you them. So we can do name.length. Tells us how many letters there are. Kind of handy. I can, what is an interesting one to do next? Okay, you maybe saw the upcase and downcase. Okay, I'll come back to that. You can change bits of it with gsub. I don't really know what that stands for. What is it? The first one I think is what to replace. So, how do I explain that? So, name is a string, and because it's a string, it has the method gsub, which says change this thing to this thing. So it takes two things, in this case two strings. And the first string is what should it look for, and the second string is what should it find. And it should give back, it will also give back a string, which is, yeah, the changed version. So, and I mean, I guess that's kind of obvious that some of the methods you don't have to give them parameters. Some of them you do. It just depends on the thing in question. Oh yeah, one handy thing is .include. That comes up quite a lot. If you want to check, does one string contain these letters? Like, I don't know, the user's just typed something in and you want to check if they, I don't know, had any swear words or if they remembered to use capital letters or something. Say, hey, does the thing contain this string? And again, not something that's terribly important to remember. You can Google for it again. Alright, so the next one is going to be a little bit crazy. Let's do list equals name dot, oh actually no, not list, words. Words equals name dot split, open brackets, and that's an empty space between, just like the space bar between these two speech marks. So we have an object and it's a string. And for whatever crazy reason I want to turn the single string into an array of individual words, because maybe I need it for something else later. So I'm turning an object of one type into an object of a different type. So in this case, words is now an array, and it's an array of strings, and each string is one word. This is one of these things, it's a useful tool that comes up organically again. But I think I'm mostly showing it to show like the changing from one class to another. Like, I had a string, now I have an array. Inside the array I have strings, and I could continue doing more stuff on that. And maybe I turn that string into a number, and I turn that number into a string, and da-da-da-da-da. So for example, if I do words.class, I should have an array. But if I do words.first.class, I should have a string. Because words.first is hello. Again, this is just something to kind of play with until you get it. Or vice versa, that if you have some kind of bug, or you write some code and it doesn't work the way you expect, to kind of be aware and kind of like look backwards of, is the class that I got the one that I expect? Okay, so that's a bunch of stuff you can do with strings. There's a whole million and one others, and when you Google for stuff, people will give crazy answers about what you can do. Again, they tend to come up organically. It's more like, for this feature, I want to do something, and then I'll use include. It's just helpful to know they exist. Okay, wrong one. Oh, yes. Okay, so connecting strings is another important one. Oops. So let's start again with name equals Steve. And actually no, okay, sorry. Change it to name1 equals Steve. And name2 equals Susan. So don't write this next bit, but I want the end result to be hello. I don't know. Hello Susan. Or hello Stephen. I want to like combine the word hello with these strings. So what you can do, I'll get some more space. Okay, so if you guys type this, hello plus name1. So you can add strings together. And you can only really do that because the people that wrote Ruby decided you could. Like, the plus doesn't always work. Like, if you tried to add a tweet to an image, it would just go like, I don't know. But it's, somebody specifically told it, if you add a string to a string, do this. So I get hello Steve, which is okay. I need to remember to put in a space. The problem is if I try and put in a number, it quits because, what is it? String plus string makes sense, number plus number, but string plus number not so much. I can put on the end of the 1.2s, which says turn that number 1, like instead of the number 1, like just a piece of text that says 1. And that will work. Like it's the same as this line. So these two lines are kind of functionally identical. Like, so this second one, it's not a number anymore. Does that make sense? Like, it's not a mathematical number, it's just a piece of text with that number in it. But that gets kind of annoying. So there's this neat string interpolation thing, which is a bit of a crazy syntax. And if I do open a string, blah 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 text, I can do this insert a variable. Name. Oops. And that will conveniently, that one is clever enough to try and turn the thing into something that will fit. So I recommend using this format over the plus format, but both exist.
How do you call it? String?
Interpolation.
Why do you recommend it?
One, because it does the conversion better. It's clever enough to try and turn whatever you give it into a string, which doesn't always work. Sometimes it will kind of like like if you try and turn an image into a string, it doesn't make sense. So sometimes it will just come out with the word image. If that makes sense. So it won't always have a very good result, but it'll work. And the other one is if you try and do like complicated ones. So if I have like multiple, if I try and do that with the plus thing, it gets a bit weird. That I have to do this plus this, and this works, but is quite annoying. Especially because I will inevitably, as you just maybe you can see, I've just forgotten to put a plus. So I end up doing it and it explodes because the syntax is harder. So the string interpolation is much easier to read, it works better, it's more reliable. So I recommend doing that. It's a little annoying remembering the syntax though. Ooh, can you all hear me okay, by the way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like I'm mumbling sometimes. Okay, although I am sick, so hopefully next week I'll be louder. Okay, so neat thing, good that it exists. Minor point that is totally not easy to remember. The string interpolation only works with double quotes. Because sometimes you want these symbols in the text. So say you really wanted to print out, not name one, you wanted to print out NAME curly bracket. So it doesn't work with single quotes, which is deliberate. I don't know what those slashes are. Anyway. So if you ever do it and it doesn't work, check that you're using double quotes. So otherwise, double and single quotes don't really make any difference. Most people will just pick one and stick with it. I vaguely recommend sticking with the double quotes because that means the string interpolation works. But it doesn't really matter as long as you close it with the same one that you open with. In fact, that's usually the other thing. If you want to have like if you want to have quotes in the text, so the outer ones are going to be interpreted as I want a string, but the inner ones are just going to be part of the content. So if you want double quotes in the content, use single quotes on the outside, and vice versa. Okay, but again, that mostly comes by you fiddle with it and you see it happen. Okay.
To what do I do? Like have a string which
So if I do two different ones, oh, so this one will probably explode because it's interpreting this as one string. This, it will expect, it won't be sure what this is, and it'll think this is a second string. So it'll probably break and go, ah, you've got too many of these things. Whereas if I do this, it will open the string and then go, okay, I see you've got one of these, but like ignore it and pretend it's just part of the text. And the same here. So we get this. It's a little hard to read. You can tell it to print it out without the slashes. So I think if I do prints, so yeah, it prints it as you expect. Yeah. When you're not.
Seen that tried some learning from regular expressions.
Yeah. So in general, this concept is called escaping characters, and it comes up a bunch of times that somewhere where you want to print a character that is part of the normal syntax, so things like the plus and the speech marks and the brackets, you want to tell it like, this bracket isn't really a bracket, it's part of the text. I think I'll just do a test. Oh, no, that didn't work. Yeah, so you guys don't need to type this one, but if I do the string interpolation thing and I put a slash before the interpolation, it will not put in name1 anymore. It will interpret it as literally the hash symbol. It doesn't come up so often. Again, it's good to know it exists, but yeah, you only need to use it when something weird is happening. Okay, the next bit is a little crazy, so I'm trying to think how to explain it, or a good example for it. Do we still have... name? Okay, so just type name. Do you still have that variable kicking around? Does everyone still got that? Okay, if you don't have it, just type it. So, okay, so I'll just type the next bit, you guys don't have to. So bring back that words equals name dot split. So I've taken name, I've told it do something with yourself and gave me back the result and put it in this variable. Actually no, maybe type this. So type the words equals name dot split again, just to get used to it.
I'm just wondering if it's happening now for the second time. When I start again, like name, hello, my name is Steve, it doesn't do anything.
Are you stuck in a string?
Like that one, when I type it in, it doesn't do the hello, my name is Steve.
I think because you've opened a string. Yeah, here we go. Hit Control C for a second. Okay, so temporary pause because that's another. Mostly it happens in IRB that it gets confusing. Name. So you guys don't type this. Just it's going to be a trick question. Okay. All right. Spot the difference. What's the difference between the two lines? So I have two almost identical lines. One works. It prints out. Dun dun dun. So, and IRB is a little confusing for this. See the way there's this tiny.
So you have to click end or something. Or
Yeah, I need to end the string. Hello. So it's still waiting for me to end the string, and this is quite confusing and happens a lot. That if you open, if you open something you have to close it, and if you don't notice you haven't closed it, it can get a bit not so obvious.
I tried earlier to do the end,
here
but
it
it
is.
didn't work.
Yep.
Is it enough to just close it now?
Yeah,
Or ring Control C and then it will stop.
But I did Command C, sorry.
Yep.
So if I do Command C, then it will stop.
because you're on a Mac, Command C is copy, Control C is what the terminal is listening for.
Command. No, Control.
And so that one's quite confusing. My test, that's why I do the 1+1 thing. If you get back 2, that means it's working. If you've opened a string and you type 1+1, it doesn't give you back 2 because it's still in a string. So then I go, oh wait, something is broke. And then you just mash Control C. I mean, technically it does tell you, it has that little quotation symbol, but it's so small, you'll never see it. It can be a problem when you've opened 5 brackets but only closed 4. So like when it gets to that size, you kind of like, it's really hard to count them. So yes, it's quite irritating. It will happen forever, but you get used to it, or you get used to noticing when IRB doesn't listen, you hit Control C a bunch of times and it goes back. But to be honest, the whole thing, if it totally doesn't work, you just close it and start. Okay, but so what we want is name equals hello, my name is Steve, and then words equals name.split. Okay, and then words dot first dot uppercase. And this is just a demo. We're gonna explain something in a second. So the important thing is that each like method, oh yeah, by the way, function and method are the same thing. Like split is a method. It's just like a verb, go and do this thing. Every method gives back something. So like 1+1 gives back 2. Name.split gives back well, this array. Sometimes the thing that it gives back is literally nothing, but it's like the value nothing, like nil, or like x equals puts woo. Puts gave back the value nil, which is like empty, but it still gave back a value. But the point is you can always do, or where am I going on this? Okay, so a method gives back something and we store it in a variable. But we don't have to store it in a variable if we don't want to. We can chain them. So like if we do name.split, it's going to give back the list, but we can go straight into doing something with it. And first we'll give back a string, which is hello, and we can go straight into doing something with it. Upcase gives back another string, which is upcase, so we can do something with it. Let's do first, which will give us the first letter. Oh, no it won't. Alright, never mind. Oh wait, give me 2 seconds. So, yeah, okay.
So split basically splits the different strings that you can find. So if you would not put a space in between hello, my name is Steve, you wouldn't identify.
Give me 2 seconds. Oh wait, hold on. So split, you're supposed to pass it in something. Like, what do I want you to split on?
Because I think.
So I'm just gonna, as an example, do is. Now it's hello, my name, and Steve, because that was where the line where the is was. By default, if you don't give it anything, it takes the space. So it splits on the space, just because that's the most common, that's what most people use it for. So the guy that wrote it just went, okay, screw it, it'll take space by default.
So when you put the thing in the brackets, that's where he splits
Mm-hmm.
at that point.
Yep. and we can give it the space character, and we'll get the same result. So if we tell it split on space, it will, but if we don't tell it anything, it will use space as the default. And again, this is what I mean by it's really hard to memorize all this stuff. You kind of just like pick it up here and there because that's such a specific thing. Oh, by the way, if you haven't seen, in IRB you can go through your history by pressing up. So if you type something that's really long and then you forget it, you can just hit up and it'll bring it back. Oh, well, let's not do that. Okay, give me 2 seconds and I'll come back. Okay. So the point was we did like name and we asked it to split it. That gave back the array. We took the array, we took the first one. Well, where am I going with this? Okay, so maybe just hold that in your brain for a second. What about what was it? Name dot split. So you guys don't need to type this one. So on one, we did it all on one line of like name.split.first.upcase, and we got back hitch. And the other one I did it, take the result of step 1, put it in a variable. On that step 1, do step 2, put it in a variable. On step 3, do the action, put it in another variable, and so on. And we get the same letter hitch. So how much sense does that make? That at each point it gives something back, and you can either store it in a variable and do something with it later, or you can immediately just do the next step with it. Does that make sense? It's a little odd. But it means you're free to do it either way, actually, based on what is like more readable with the code. In this case, I think the first one, all on one line, is more readable, but sometimes doing it on multiple lines is better. But you really you just write it and see what happens. Oops, sorry. I don't know, sometimes that can get a bit conceptually tricky. Do I have any examples? Okay, that's a bad example. I'm not really sure what the point I was trying to make with that was. I don't know, I think it's something that it's more just a point of confusion sometimes. That either you end up missing one of these steps, or I don't know, I think the important thing is that everything returns something, that it gives back an answer, and that you can then do stuff with. I don't know, I'll maybe come back to it if I can figure out why. Okay, but the general concept Okay, I think I'll try and cover functions quickly, but not in so much depth. And I think we're gonna need a file for this. So, should we? Actually, okay, so find a file. So find a folder on your computer. I'm trying to think how to do this. It's the easiest way. I don't know, how comfortable is everyone with the terminal? Do you need like step-by-step instructions?
I think we did that yesterday, but so
We didn't create a file, did we?
um,
We know how to find it through the terminal.
If
How
you
do
can-
I end IRB?
Oh, exit. Okay, so maybe in Sublime or whatever your current preference is, create a file and save it anywhere really. Well, to be honest, I recommend putting all of your stuff. Oh, we don't have Dropbox yet. Never mind. Later on, I recommend putting it in Dropbox, because then everyone can, like, you can show people your stuff. So as far as Sublime Text is concerned, just it's a normal file. Save it wherever. And then you want a CD to that folder, and I can come around and help if you need it. So just wave and yell. And you want to be at the point where when you type ls, it shows up in the list. Or actually, no, wait. In the file, just puts hello. Hold on, I'll make this smaller. So in the file, it should say puts hello, and then when you run ruby test.rb, you should see hello. And that's the point we want to get to.
but we can't create a file through the terminal.
You can, but then you have to use Vim, and Vim is quite tricky in the beginning.
How did you say that you did that exit thing? Just press escape. No,
Uh, If you're in IRB, you just type the word exit,
oh, okay.
and it goes away. Okay, everybody good? Yeah, if you're getting stuck, just yell, I'll wander. Well, actually, I'll wander out anyway.
I'm just trying to not save it in the same place as yesterday.
CD, you need to type CD and then.
Oh, kept on doing this yesterday.
And then you have to start puts hello. okay. Well, actually, one thing is, are there any general questions so far about what we've done until now? Just before I launch into something else. Okay, everyone's good? Okay, so the next bit is definitely an introduction. Functions, so we're going to do functions. I don't know, I think functions is definitely something you have to like fiddle with until you get it. Because again, it's one of those things that kind of like, you read the explanation and it makes sense, but it's not until you see it like explode that you're like, ah, okay. So it's definitely something to poke at and try them in different ways and really like, I mean, the way I like learning is kind of learning by breaking stuff, because then you see like, okay, it doesn't work when I do this, and it does work when I do that, so what happened there? And that quite often clears things up, and functions are quite like that there's a lot of things that you won't realize it's doing until you break it somehow, and you're like, ah, okay, I need to do blah. Okay, so what is a function? Let's do a simple bit first. Hello. So imagine we have like, so you guys type this as well. So we have some like big long line of code. Imagine instead of 3 lines, it's like 20 lines and there's crazy maths and it's plus this and plus that. Oh, actually maybe that's not a good idea. And okay, so don't copy this bit, but imagine I want to do it like 5 times. This is now getting a bit messy. And now imagine not only do I want to do it 5 times, but I realize I don't want complicated, I want to say I am not complicated. So I'm like, oh no, I have to change all 5. And this is like obviously quite irritating. What will be much nicer. Okay, so now we go back to copy. Def hello. I can just do puts hello. Okay, let's do it like 3 times. And I've wrapped this code in a function that I can then reuse as many times as I like. Okay, so if you save all that and then run it, you should see the thing printed and repeated 3 times. Everybody get that?
When you define a function, it doesn't necessarily print it immediately.
No, which is
You
also a
see
fair,
that, okay.
yes, which is a very good point. So creating a function doesn't run the function. So I could have a function saying def delete all users, and it's not until I call it that it runs. Which is quite good. So it means when you've got like a big app, you've got your thousands of like little tools that you've built, like the tool to post an image to Facebook, and you've got a tool to like delete a blog post, and you've got a tool to, I don't know, print out how many active users there are, but they just sit there waiting for you to use them. And so that's the neat thing about functions.
You put them in a separate document?
Yes or no. Like this one, if this was the app and we're done, it would be totally fine to just leave them there. By the time you get to Rails, where's Rails? There's like 500 million files, and each thing has its own, like for example, so everything to do with orders goes in this file called orders, and everything to do with the homepage goes in this one. So once it gets bigger, you start to split everything up into different files, like as appropriate. So definitely yes, or yes you can, but you don't have to, I think is the point. Okay, so let's get rid of that one. second. Oh, so you already saw. So these things are all functions, or mostly. So we've already been using functions, and with some functions you can like give them. So stuff like upcase is just like, it's like a verb. You just say go do this thing, and some it's like you give it some extra information to work with. So name.split, we can tell it what do we want to split on, and I think we had, did we have one? I think we had like include somewhere. Yeah. So we have a string and a function and then a value to check. So we can like give it something, yeah, to work with. So say instead of I am not complicated, we want a name. Puts hello name. So we're going to change our original function. So we've got, so it's always def and end and a function name. This is one of the places I think where the space matters. I think if you have a space here, I think it will break. Afterwards, not so important. And then we tell it what do we want the name of the parameter to be. That also means we need to change. Oh, actually, we don't need those puts. I'm dumb. So we can just say hello Dave, hello Susan, hello Bob. Okay, if you got that, try running it. Oops. So, okay, well, did everyone get it working to start with? Everyone good? So, what is important here? Oh, well, we've only got 10 minutes left. So one thing that's important here is to, and I've never found a good way of putting this into words, but when you use a function, there's like the inside, like how does it look from the inside and how does it look from the outside? And then there's a big line down the middle.
Local and global.
Even more so, that like, so whenever we're on the outside, down here, we say hello Dave. And it's like I'm giving, okay, wait, no, I'll do a demo first and then change it. Okay, so take name and change it to Bork. And it should still work. So this Bork is like a variable, but it kind of automatically happens. And the point is, so from the outside, nothing changed. So inside we changed hello or name to Bork, and the outside didn't care. And
we can name variables as we want.
yes, this one is a specific one, or well, because what quite often people will do in the beginning is they get confused and go hello Dave. Instead of putting Dave here, they put Dave there.
Yeah.
It's like it takes.
Is that the placeholder?
Yeah.
If you could even put nothing.
Well, yeah, you can totally put.
Put like an empty space.
Well, you can put nothing. Actually, I'm gonna get rid of these for a second. Actually, I'm not sure. It might explode. Let's see. No, it complains and says you must
Oh, no, no.
give me the right number of arguments. I could put in blank, but because it's still a string, it's fine with it. It's just printing out the blank string. Where am I going with this?
I put an underscore and it worked still.
Yeah, that's the thing. As long as what goes in is a string, what arrives at Bork. So it's the same as if we did Bork equals div. Maybe that makes more sense. So if we do hello div, this Bork variable, okay, actually let's change it back to name, just because this is silly. So the name variable gets magically created with div because we passed in div. And then we can do stuff with it. I don't know, is that generally, it's kind of, the problem is there's a common mistake everybody makes that I'm trying to figure out how to explain how to not make it, but it's not really working. Okay, well anyway, you can pass in values and then do stuff with it. But the point is, once the value is in there, you're free to do whatever you like with it. And you don't have to worry where it came from. I think we'll cover this again tomorrow anyway, so don't worry if this makes no sense. Okay, so we can pass in a value. And
yeah, but maybe like if, I think, get what you trying to get at, like if you would now write, for example, puts name after the hello statement, then
yeah, it
one
doesn't.
might expect that that still would work.
Nope.
But since it's just within the function,
Yeah, it's gonna explode.
yeah.
So line 11, this name only exists inside this function. And outside of it, it's gone. But that's a bit of a different topic, so let's maybe leave it at that, because it's nearly lunchtime. One last thing I want to do. But so in general, that's what a function is. It's a chunk of code. It sits here on its own, waits for you to call it. You can pass in things for it to use, because maybe you want something like send email to blah, and then you're telling it who do I want to send the email to, or like, yeah. So that's the summary. It gets more complicated. We're going to do more of it later or tomorrow.
How are you testing it? You're doing terminal, right?
Yep. In the terminal, I just rerun that Ruby test.rb.
Okay.
But I mean, basically we can also just do the same as earlier, putting the curly brackets and the name
Yes.
at the very long side. So that is whole,
Oh, this
and it will do the same.
name. Yes. In this case, we're kind of imagining that this is really complicated. Like we've got some weird, crazy. So imagine we had like 20 lines of maths. It was like, or I don't know. We have some weird like if day equals Tuesday. So you guys don't type this, so this is just imaginary. So imagine instead of like, we could, like the printing out bit is simple, but there's some kind of complicated check we want to do. We could do that if, whoops, before each one, but it'd be really repetitive. So this function we're kind of just pretending is really complicated. So obviously it's quite simple, but we imagine. Oh wait, can I find an example of that? So this is from another project. It's like, check has the project had too many donations? So we've got this like complicated maths of like, check if the donations that have been confirmed and the amount plus the external donations in cents, and then like sum the amount that they've actually received, and then if the amount that they've requested, so it's this big like complicated maths, and then you hide it behind this. So now elsewhere you just do like if project dot over donated end. So if we tried to put all of this into the if, it would look really messy. So we hide it away in a function, and then we can just do like this, and now it's really readable. So that's like one of the main uses of functions, just to like hide complicated code away. That's also how you get to like that kind of semi-English readable code. That like you take the bits that aren't readable English and hide them somewhere.
Is the question mark, is that actually important? Or is that just a convention for things that evaluate to true or false?
Yes. So you are allowed to use almost any character at all, except spaces. I think you can even use Japanese characters in function names, although that's a bad idea. But you can have like, well, basically anything that's not already a character. Like you could call it, no, would that work? Like, I think you could call it that. It would be a bad idea, but you could do it. One of the letters you can use is a question mark. So one thing people use it for is if something is going to be true or false, they'll call the function something question mark, just to make it easier to remember. So now, like, next month when I see this, I can be vaguely sure it's a true or false thing. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay. So it's not a rule, it's just like a nice thing to have. Okay, so I think that's enough for today.